1 is King David. Notice in the title, 25 people who most influence the music of Christianity does not say they had to be Christian. I understand King David was not Christian. Then, of course, Jesus wasn't either. So, say that to a Baptist sometimes. And be prepared for a fight.
Yeah. It's on the Baptist.
King David lived from approximately 1040 to 970 BC, so we're talking 3,000 years ago. He is king of Israel from about 1010 to 970, so he reigned for quite a while. As well as being a warrior and king, he was also a noted musician and poet. Several verses in the Old Testament mention his prowess as a musician or his addition of music to worship. Occasionally you'll get into an argument where there'll be people that say, I think we have too much music in the church service. I'm not saying here necessarily, but I've been in these arguments multiple places. And there are verses you can pull out of both the Old Testament and the New Testament that back the use of music during the worship service. 1 Samuel 16, I have seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the harp. Isn't that wonderful? David, of course, was the son of Jesse. 2 Samuel refers to David as Israel's singer of songs. Feel free after I'm dead to refer to me as Ackworth's singer of songs. 2 Chronicles, David orders to present the burnt offerings of the Lord as written in the law of Moses with rejoicing and singing. Nehemiah 12, Hosea and half the leaders of Judah followed them, as well as some priests with trumpets, with musical instruments prescribed by David, the man of God. So David actually prescribed which instruments were going to be used during the worship service. Isn't that wonderful? Nehemiah 12, for long ago in the days of David and Asaph, there have been directors for the singers and for the songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. Isn't that wonderful? Remember, if you see the Asaph's name in the Psalms, you'll see a hymn about Asaph, very spicy. Wonderful. David wrote about half the Psalms in the Bible. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, Psalm Scroll, attributes over 4,000 songs to David, putting him behind Fanny Crosby and Charles Wesley, but ahead of just about everyone else in history. So if we were going to have the all-time list based on quantity, King David would be number 3. Wesley would be number 1, Fanny Crosby number 2. He would be number 3. And I want a little love for the great thank you. David, King of Israel. And
cool hat.
I think it's a cool hat, but notice, here's a depiction of David as King of Israel, and he's depicted with his harp. He's not depicted with a sword. He's depicted with a harp. Isn't that wonderful?
Picking and grinning.
Did he do it on horseback?
Pardon?
Did he do it on horseback?
Like Wesley did. This is from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And David, the son of Jesse, was wise, and a light like the light of the sun, and literate, and discerning and perfect in all his ways before God and men. And the Lord gave him a discerning and enlightened spirit, and he wrote 3,600 songs. And songs to sing before the altar over the whole burnt perpetual offering every day, for all the days of the year, 364. And for the offering of the Sabbaths, 52 songs. And for the offering of the new moons, and for all the solemn assemblies. And for the day of atonement, 30 songs. And all the songs that he spoke were 446, and songs for making music over the stricken 4, and the total was 4,050 songs. And all these he composed through prophecy, which was given him before the Most High. So in other words, according to this author, these were all godly inspired songs that he wrote. So 4,000. Now, we can get into the whole argument about do we want to accept the Dead Sea Scrolls as being authoritative, but I don't even know that you have to view this that way. View this as a historical document. It lays out pretty specifically what songs David wrote. I don't know why we would necessarily just toss that away. You can have some question about it. But somebody 3,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, went to all this effort to recount this. And I don't see any reason to just toss it out and ignore it. Lydia.
I was reading in Acts 1, and they were talking about before Jesus ascended into heaven. And one of the verses that jumped out at me talked about, there two Psalms quoted in Acts 1, and it says David, you know, pretty much inspired by the Holy Spirit wrote,
those.
which has the prophecy being fulfilled. And I had not really seen that before, but
Hadn't hit you before, yeah.
yeah, that David, you know, being inspired by the Holy Spirit to write those two verses that are quoted by Peter in Acts, and to me it just gives credence to anything he wrote in the Psalms, because there's so much that's in there. It was really interesting to see that.
But I thought this was a real fun, because when I was struggling with who to make number one and number two, and I was thinking about, should Gregory the Great be number one, should Luther be number one? And then I came upon this from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I said, King David. So he was writing the Psalms that I made King David number one. The first 1,500 years of the Christian church, the Psalms set to music were the primary music of the church. All those Gregorian plain chants were, 90% of them were based on the Psalms. Even after Luther democratized the church service and put the focus on congregational singing rather than clerical singing, the Psalms figured strongly in new musical compositions, and even contemporary Christian music. A lot of it is still based on the Psalms. So the Psalms today are still an important part of Christian worship.